with all due respect.
Hey, we're Josh Ortegan and Gray Gaines, and this is With All Due Respect, the show where we keep it real about health, fitness, and performance. From weight loss to sports development, we're covering the conversations that matter.
Follow us on Instagram at Phenom Fitness, PHNM Fitness, and visit www.phenomfit.com to check out our training programs, coaching, and gear built for real results. Let's get into it.
All right, recording on progress. Well, this is With All Due Respect with Josh and Gray, and we thank so many of you people for your feedback on what we're doing. This kind of goes with the conversation me and Don were talking about. I am amazed when I have friends tell me at jujitsu or whatever that they listen to the podcast. Like, it blows my mind, as much as it blows my mind, Don, that people actually got results from my workouts back in the day with athletes. It blows my mind that people actually listen to our podcast. I assume sometimes it's just me and Gray.
It is us too.
And people listen to it, and I go, "That's right, I got a podcast," and people listen to it, and it's crazy. And today we're going to have Don Reagan on, and a little bit of background about Don. I've known Don for, I want to say, about 11, 12 years. We've met one time at Summer Strong at Sorenex, which is a beautiful place to be if you've never been at Summer Strong with Sorenex. Great people, great community, great structure there. I first met Don, and I just wanted to talk about to people who are doing like the functional movement screening, who are in the academic world, and your insight and the industry has been great. Don, can you just introduce yourself? Tell us why we even want to listen to you. Maybe we don't,
Well,
Don, but
yeah, good question. I guess your listeners are listening to me because you invited me on this interview. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about this. What makes someone an expert? I think is a topic that we will explore together today. But my journey started in actually Ocean City, New Jersey. My sophomore year at the high school there, I begged my PE teacher for a job at his gym, Iron Raider Gym and Fitness. I had already been pretty enthralled with human performance, World's Strongest Man on ESPN. And so I got a job at this gym, being the desk guy and closing the gym at night. And it was a really awesome gym that had a lot of competitive athletes of different types. I got exposed to so many wonderful human beings in a community that shared in the discipline of physical activity, which I really, really loved. So things like Olympic weightlifters, strong men, strong women, power lifters, bodybuilders, marathoners. So, you name it. In the summer, big tourist area, we would get some pro athletes and some college coaches, sport strength coaches who would come down for their vacations. So I very carefully was studying all these people and loved that gym job. I was there for about 3 years. I learned a ton, was around a lot of people who were some, formally educated, some not, but there was a discipline, a physical discipline that I really, really enjoyed. I ended up going to a university in Virginia, majored in exercise science, and sort of started this journey of marrying theory and practice. I had all this kind of weight room experience, being coached, and trying to see how training fit into human performance and sport performance. That eventually led to a PT, physical therapist, kind of direction or path. I specifically wanted to be that PT strength coach kind of person, a foot in each world. I was particularly interested in the physical examination component of being a PT, as well as the manual therapy kind of aspects. I was coming to the PT profession with a fairly strong exercise background, coaching, and so on. I ended up interning at Duke University in their healthcare system, got to taste sports medicine on both the academic and the athletic side, biomechanics lab, so on. And then eventually went to PT school in San Diego. So moved across the country, really enjoyed that. Got to see college sports medicine there at San Diego State. Took my first PT job in New York City with Rob Panarillo, really wonderful, human and mentor of mine and still is a colleague. Moved back to Virginia, where I eventually taught some strength and conditioning at my alma mater, Liberty University, and then eventually worked for Gray Cook or with Gray for about 5 years in the functional movement folks. If I can go back, my undergrad experience, one of the things that was really inspiring was we had two master strength coaches there. And although I was far from an athlete, at that level, I really enjoyed Dave Williams and Bill Gillespie, being around those guys, seeing how they thought and trained and the mission they had in the weight room and what they believed they were doing with their teams. I really, really enjoyed being around them. I wasn't an intern. I didn't GA. I was just really in awe of both of those men and their dedication and discipline to their craft. And so I was really shaped by strength and conditioning coaches. I just, happened to choose to go to PT school for better or for worse. But I'm very proud of that heritage. I took my CSCS the week I began PT school. It's the first credential that ever meant anything to me. I still maintain it. It's important to me. I love my strength coach, performance coach colleagues and that industry. And I think what they do, especially in a team setting, is incredibly hard. There's a lot of variables. There's a lot of people. The football team where I currently am at Carson Newman University carries anywhere, around 150 athletes on our roster. And so the workload on our performance staff is really astronomical. And I admire them. I admire what they do and the culture that they have created here. But also, I just think great strength coaches have a way of leading people and creating great culture. The weight room is a wonderful place. I love all the kind of the ideas behind it, right? Like gravity doesn't change, the iron doesn't change, but we change, right? And so if 50 pounds is lighter today than it was yesterday, then we got better. And vice versa, if 50 pounds is heavier than it was yesterday, then we didn't recover well or we didn't get better for some reason. And, it doesn't matter what your ethnicity is, your socioeconomic status, your education level. The weight room is a truly kind of democratic place where you get out of it what you put into it. Maybe meritocracy is a better term, an egalitarian meritocracy. Like ultimately you get out of it what you put into it. And I love that. And I think the democracy might come in with how we view each other in that process and in that setting. So at my heart, I think has always been the weight room. It always will be. I'm not a particularly large human or an athletic human. I've coached and worked with a lot of people who do things so much better than I do physically. My superpower is, I think, simply connecting with other people and helping them to navigate kind of hard situations, whether that's concussions or an ACL tear or, the identity crisis that they may not be the same athlete that they once were. And I love the opportunity to be their guide and kind of come alongside them and help them process those things. So it's kind of a convoluted path. I was the only meathead in my PT cohort. Everyone else in San Diego was an endurance athlete. They were all triathletes. And, I was getting into kettlebells and I was doing snatches and get-ups. And I was weightlifting with Mike Bergner in Bonsall, California during my PT school. I did a rotation in Marietta, California near him. And, I have very fond memories of lifting in his home gym and being around him. Oh yeah, I trained at Mike's.
It's Mike's garage.
Yeah. I trained in Mike Bergner's garage gym for a year. One of the highlights of my DPT schooling experience was on Christmas Day. My wife's a nurse and she was working in the hospital, and I drove up to Mike's gym alone on Christmas Day. They were on vacation somewhere, and Mike said, "Hey, like this is the code. You're welcome to go and train." And so I lifted in Mike's gym, which had a beautiful view, and just alone on a Christmas day, a holiday, and it was so cathartic. It was probably the strongest I've ever been. I deadlifted 425 there one day, which again, all very relative.
No,
Gray, I'm sure you deadlift more than me, and that's fine. The Sorinex people all deadlift more than me. My identity has not come from that. That was a PR for me. I'm okay with that. We all have our gifts and our talents and our strengths and our weaknesses, and so my point is that everywhere I've lived, I've really chased human performance and people who are pushing those boundaries. And it's not just physical. I think it's mental, it's spiritual. I think I really enjoy human beings that are, flourishing, they're thriving. And I don't have to be, super excited about what they do, but I love being around their enthusiasm.
I
I
feel
think my first,
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, my first thought that I think of is you have a hell of a resume. That
Yeah.
was incredible to
Yeah.
hear the length of your resume. And second, I very seldom meet anyone who's moved around as much as I have. So also really cool to hear all the places you've lived.
Thanks. It's an adventure, right?
It is.
Yeah, my
Man,
wife and I met in undergrad, and she went to Duke, and I chased her, and then
Yeah,
we wanted to go out west, and so we did that. It's just
I feel you.
instead of vacationing, we tend to just
Just
relocate,
move.
which
That's how I
yeah,
am.
yeah,
That's exactly how I am.
hey,
maybe
I
that's because
visited this place.
we're poor.
She moved to Montana. She goes, I'm moving to Montana. She goes, I visited there once. She goes,
Yeah,
I'll move here. I'm like, all right.
That's exactly what I did.
that's
All this
right.
time, I've never known you've been to Bergener's. I mean, every crowd, what breaks my heart. This is an age thing. When I hear people talk about something like a Pendlay bar or Bergener's gym or Bergener's warm up, like I hear kids
Sure,
go, and they are like, yeah, man, Mike Bergener. They're like, we don't even know who that is. I'm like,
sure,
Bergener, what do you? It's probably how Richard Soren felt when I didn't know what Zuver plates were and where Zuver plates came
sure,
from. He's like,
sure,
when I spent an hour and a half in Richard's room one time because I wasn't 100% sure who Tommy Kono was.
sure,
So he pulled me into the office and said, son, you can't do anything in this industry if you don't know who Tommy Kono is.
sure,
And I had
sure.
to,
And Josh, I think that segues into expertise. And maybe the issue with our industry, especially on the fitness performance side, is that the barrier of entry is too low. In other countries, Europe and Australia, performance coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, a lot of them are applied PhDs. Like there is a rigorous process of licensure, certification, examination, graduate school to get there. And in America, right, we still kind of go by do you look like you played? Did you play at a high level? Like, oh, you must be able to coach.
yeah.
Do you have a high social media following nowadays?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you an influencer? And I'm not saying those things don't have merit and value. We talked a little bit about marketing ourselves, and for some people that's harder to do than others. But yeah, I am in this for the long game. I think about expertise. My favorite phrase is long obedience in the same direction. When I was at Sorinex at Summer Strong, no one knew my name really. Bert and I have had interactions over the last decade, and he's been very generous and kind to me. But there was a young fellow there who I think looked down on me because I was a smaller human. And I don't have, big numbers or this history of, exceptionally successful lifting numbers. And it was sort of like, kind of, what are you doing here? And, that was a test of my humility of just going, I've been in this industry, in this game for about 20 years, and I think I will be for the next 20 years. I consider it a blessing that I fell in love with this strength game, if you will, when I was 15 years old. And it was a therapeutic experience. It was really healthy for me to be in that gym. I basically paid no attention to high school, and I put all my effort into training. And I loved that time. I learned how to work hard. I'm very grateful for the weight room, and I always will be. It doesn't matter, how people know me. If I'm an author of something, or if I'm a professor or a PT. I think the one thing that I will hold on to more than anything is probably being a learner, and then being a frequent flyer in a weight room.
Yeah.
I love the gym. Probably my favorite times in gyms are actually alone. I really enjoy being in the weight room alone. I find it spiritual and really, really healthy. And then the second would be in the weight room with my sons. I have 4 sons whom I love. I had a chance to, coach one in the Olympic lifts just a couple of days ago. I
I
posted
saw
on
the
social
video,
media.
Don.
I figured that might have been what
I
instigated
saw
it.
so I saw
I gotta go look at it now.
that's what made me reach out is we texted a few times last month or so, and then it was about somebody applying for a job. You
Right,
asked me if I know him. I'm like, no
right,
clue. He could have
right.
been turned down. This guy could have worked for me for a year, and I'd be like, I don't know. I don't know.
That's all right.
And I saw you teaching your son to do a clean, and you said skill acquisition.
Right.
And I went, oh, that's, and you know what I said? I said, that's something I'm missing in what I'm training kids right now, skill acquisition. I mean,
Man, Josh,
feel
I
like
really appreciate you highlighting that, for our audience, or just, hey, for my own edification, because for a long time I really struggled, like, what is it about the weight room that I love so much? And there's certainly the community, my extroversion, like I love the human piece and people working on themselves and working towards a goal. So the psychology of that, I'm all in, flourishing, thriving, stretching potential. I love all of that. But when it comes to like kind of what is the science, and when I think back to my undergraduate degree in exercise science, my favorite course above all was motor learning. I love just the topic of motor learning, the research of motor learning, which has become kind of the newer term, I guess we use, is skill acquisition, but it's really motor learning and performance. I teach this course here at Carson Newman.
Okay.
I love this class. I teach it every semester. And so where I'm going with this, Josh, is that as I explored that high school weight room, right? Again, Iron Raider Gym and Fitness. It was like 9th Street in Ocean City, New Jersey. What I fell in love with, I'm not going to lie, Gray, like certainly there was an aesthetic piece. How many females can I attract, right? But but I think especially once I committed to a female and kind of matured through that, the piece that really attracted me was the acquiring of these movement skills of like learning to dumbbell press, learning to barbell snatch. I remember the first time my strength coach, we talk about a great name for a first strength coach. My first coach, his name was Fritz Hastings. And I love this guy. Anybody from Ocean City, New Jersey, who was in athletics or in that weight room knows him. Kind of an eccentric fellow, but just very lovable. And I vividly remember him coaching me on the back barbell squat for the first time. And I struggled. It was hard, right? Back barbell squats are hard. And as I'm going down in the eccentric phase, and my pelvis, having a hard time controlling my pelvis in all three planes. And that was just that first experience of like, I want to be good at this. And what is the process by which, we should teach this? I later learned from Gray and others about, using motor development of like, we actually learn as children to squat from the bottom up, right? So we're in all fours or in quadruped. We push onto our feet or push back onto our feet. And then we lift our hands off the ground and we stand, or we pull to stand,
yeah.
right? So the idea, if we're going to teach a novice to squat, then we probably should not start with a bar on their back. Now, granted, if their goal is to be a powerlifter, we're going to have to get there and they're going to have to get good at that. But, the sequence of skill acquisition, I love that idea of kind of gaining competency through a progression. And then the rehab side of, okay, well, how do I regress the back barbell squat? I'm currently working with a baseball player who's had 2 lumbar spondylolisthesis. And he's never going to back barbell squat again, right? It's just not a good place for him. We've tried some front squatting with heel lift, heel wedges. He doesn't really like that either. Hey, you know what? We don't got a front squat. The guy's a pitcher. Like, we can belt squat. We can find all these other alternatives. But when I think back to kind of my journey over the last 20 years, the thing that I think has been the most common thread, whether it was time with Bill Gillespie benching, or it was Mike Bergner in the Olympic lifts, or any other, kind of lots of folks in our industry, I think that's the piece for me that I have loved the most. And I feel really just blessed to be able to teach that on a semester by semester basis. I tell my exercise science students, I'm like, this is the course you came to exercise science for. If you're not excited about skill acquisition and how to communicate what you're doing and why you're doing it, what the science is behind it, which really the parent discipline is cognitive psychology or practice design, like, you're in the wrong place. Like, that you probably need to do something else. But I love motor learning. And so when I think about the clean, or I think about sprinting or jumping or a manual technique, it's all motor learning.
Don, you connected something for me just there. We've had a couple of physical therapists on this, and the common theme is, sometimes you look at the world through the lens of your environment. Okay. I never really didn't think about physical therapy and recovery outside of being too far disconnected from strength and conditioning, because I've been involved in strength and conditioning.
Yeah, that's rare.
And yeah, so we had a guy on, someone I respect, and they have, when you walk into the physical therapy place, the first thing you see is a squat rack. And he told me how rare that is, that most physical therapy is still the bands and the simple ways. But I just connected something. I think you were probably the first person in the physical therapy space that said, I am going to take my CSCS and my love for the weight room, and I'm going to take that to a rehab environment, because that is what people really need, is strengthening.
Sure.
You're the first person in those conversations that made me go, wow, we're morphing into something different. And that was 2014.
Sure. Yeah, progressive. I certainly am not the first, and maybe the first that you came across, but Gray took his CSCS, I think he graduated PT school in 91 from University of Miami. I think that was also, his passion. Don Chu is another PTAT,
Yeah.
PhD, plyometrics godfather. So there's lots of people, Rob Panarillo, there's lots of folks who
Who
I think
didn't read Jumping into Plyometrics? I did.
right.
It's
Yeah.
the first thing I stole from somebody at IMG Academy.
Yeah, I have the book somewhere here in my office. So I think there's been lots of people who are, trying to bridge that space. Your phrase of kind of like you're limited by kind of your worldview, or kind of like where your framing is. I think about that often. There's one of the famous Louis Simmons quotes, right, about if you walk with a lame, you'll develop a limp, right? Like kind of how you view the world, how you view what you're doing really matters. Your philosophy or your metaphysic really, really matters. And for me, I've just wanted to be a collaborator. I wanted to learn from everyone that I've been around. And one of the many things I learned from Gray Cook that was so seminal for me is he would say a lot. He would go, my goal is if someone came to shadow me in this facility, and my name wasn't on the building and they didn't know my reputation, if they came to watch me work, could they tell? I love this. Could they tell what kind of professional I am? What my letters are behind my name? In other words, I don't want them to know. I don't want to be a traditional PT, who's only thinking from a biomechanical lens and does a lot of IR, ER, and clamshells. Like, I want them to be a little confused of like, exactly what label, what kind of frame are you? Are you a strength coach? Are you an athletic trainer? Are you a chiropractor? Are you an acupuncturist? Like, kind of how do you fit into this kind of medical world, a health performance world? And I loved that. And that still resonates with me. I love, to kind of be, like kind of a bit of a confusing
Renaissance
person.
man, I could say.
Say that again?
Renaissance.
Yeah, I mean, to have range, right? Like I want breadth and depth. It's not one or the other, but I want there to be range, and I think that's what, maybe again touching on expertise, really is. To me, being an expert is someone who's also creatively connecting dots that no one else has ever done before. Like, if you think Kelly Starrett was the first person to put bands on people's joints and do self care, then you're mistaken, right? There was this guy Dick Hartzell.
Yeah.
Man, he was champion bands on joints for therapeutic purposes. Donnie Thompson's also developed some creative ways to do this, and they're all good ideas. I'm not saying one's any better than the other, but I am a historian, I guess, gently speaking, a lay historian of physical culture. The Stark Center at University of Texas is, Terry and Jan Todd. That's a bucket list item for me. I want to go there. So I think the history of our industry really matters. And back to the barrier of entry might be too low, but then also what happens is people come and go, right? They cycle in and out of our industry very, very rapidly. Perform Better is a great example. The trainers that go to Perform Better events, right? That the majority of that audience is turning over every 3 years, if not faster. Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
Presenters don't.
I think because, we have people who are kinesthetic learners. They love to move and exercise, and they want to help others do it. But to actually make a living, being a personal trainer is really hard.
Yeah.
You have to have some business acumen. You have to market. It's actually a really tough thing. The lifestyle is hard, right? You have to be available in early mornings and late evenings. And so I think the turnover probably just comes from the logistics of, actually getting good at it and making a living at it is a really tough journey.
One thing I've noticed, Gray has been doing CrossFit. And here's
Something I never said I would do.
Yeah, right. But people polarize. This whole world is polarized, right? And
Sure.
people are like, "Oh, I hate CrossFit." You know what the coolest thing about CrossFit is? She posted a video of her learning doing power cleans, like a
Yeah.
full clean, like a full clean. And like I
Yeah.
think I watched her video like 7 or 8 times, watching it, and I'm like, "Well," and I got myself excited watching her do cleans because Olympic lifts are what got me into exercise. And,
Sure.
um, she's doing it. She's doing it. It's just fun that you go back to skill acquisition. It's fun to watch her do CrossFit because now it's not just like going in and doing workouts so you look better. You're learning a skill.
Mm.
And that
Yeah.
applies to everything in life, right? That
Yeah.
applies to everything in life. I've
Right.
said for years, some of the easiest people to strength train are baseball players because they've learned the skill acquisition of the batting swing. So when they learn that skill, translating it to learning a skill in the weight room
Yeah.
is so
That's right.
much easier. It's not
Yeah.
even
You think
Yeah.
because of the technicality of it?
they learn. I
That's
said
right.
learning's a process, right? I mean, we've all seen
Right.
10,000 hours, and people who learn to play a musical instrument can learn like your
Sure.
brain. It rewires your brain on how to learn a movement pattern skill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it was cool, Don, to hear you talk about too, just like how where really all of this started was in the weight room. And I feel very similarly to you. It's like the weight room has taught me to learn so much outside of the weight room because I love learning so much inside of the weight room. So me saying I'm never gonna freaking do CrossFit in my life, but I got to a point in my training where I was like, I want to do something hard, like
Mhm.
Sure.
really, really hard that I've never done
Yeah.
before. I constantly want to do something else, or I constantly want to learn something else or be in a weight room with a bunch of guys or whatever. Just
Sure.
constantly proving yourself. So it's cool to hear you connect those things.
The weight
Yeah.
room for me, I have a history of some time, and I think Don, you might be this way. People look at certain things. I'm an overthinker, right? Um, um, I will romanticize something because I don't my brain just doesn't work with like um in simplistic directions. I overthink everything and I look at everything like I remember if someone was like, well, what do you really do you really believe that? I go, what do you mean by believe? Like I'll break down 30 minutes of the word believe, Don, right? I'll break down 30 minutes of the word believe if you want to ask me to believe something. And I'm like, well, what does believe mean to you? What do you mean by believe? What do you mean, right? But the weight room has been something that I have romanticized because nothing has ever broken me down and pruned me to be a different person like the weight room. Nothing.
Broken.
Nothing like it broke. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that.
Broken.
I mean that emotionally, but I do mean that physically. That my body is physically. Don had a friend. I have shoulder tendonitis from jujitsu, and I told my buddy, as a physical therapist, I think you've met him. Hey, how long does it take to recover? And he goes, well, if you do it right, 4 weeks. If you still lift and do jujitsu, 12. I said, so you're telling me 16.
Mhm.
Listen, right? But yeah, Don, the weight room for me, the industry for me, the reason why I so aggressively defend it is because I've seen the direct lives it's changed and impact over time. That when people come into this industry, because it is a low barrier and it's a quick money thing or an influencer thing, or so, I said, man, this means a lot to a lot of people, right? And it's changed a lot of people's lives, and it changed your life. 15 years old, where school didn't mean much because you wanted to be in the weight room, and it has nothing to do. Yes, aesthetics, how we look. But man, it like you said, it's meritocracy at its best or worst, however you want to describe it. You do not lie in the weight room, right? I'm telling you, I went through majority of my career and my learning time was with Richard Soren. You better not say you've done it if you don't want that man walking out with a $50 bill and go do it.
Nice.
You're
Yeah.
either lying or we had a kid one time want to put money and was talking trash for a month that he could squat 225 for 50.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
boy, Richard Soren came out of his office with money. Everybody's collecting money. He's setting up the squat rack. And the kid's like, what are you doing? It's like, you're doing it. He goes, I'm sick and tired of
That's right.
hearing you talk about it.
That's right. That's
He
right.
put the band down. His butt had
That's
to
right.
touch the band. He put 225 on it. And the
That's
kid
right.
did 51.
Wow.
He did,
Wow.
he did 51. He did
That makes
Wow.
me want to throw up.
51 times. And dude, when I tell you, we were mocking him, making fun of him. He was going to do it. He's going to get to 30. When he got to 30 and he wanted to quit, when he
Yeah.
got to 41 and he's just looking at him, and when the kid did 51 and the gym, like he did 50, and Richard goes, 51, you spineless monkey. And he hit another one for 51. And when he did that, I became unglued. The
Sure.
gym erupted. The kid immediately became a hero. It
Yeah.
was one of the greatest moments, and I've seen that with teenagers. I had a teenager was supposed to squat 175 for 20. We're doing, my guys don't know, we're doing the old super squats program, right? Without the gallon of milk. But I mean, if you want to go
Sure.
back to getting how to get tough, do the super squat program.
Sure.
Kid had 175 and was going to do it for 20, and he got to 13 and he couldn't do it. He looks at me and like he wanted to quit at 13. And I said, I'm sorry, you got 7. Like, there's no tomorrow, son. And
Yeah.
he's get to 17. He wants to cry. He racks it. He didn't know he accidentally loaded 205,
Mm.
not 175.
How do you accidentally load
Yeah,
205?
man. Math's not kid's skill, but he's strong as he got, and he's got guts. And I told him, you can you can get a lot further in life with having guts and being strong. I told him this.
Mhm.
And when the kid realized he did 30 pounds more than he was supposed to, I said, and this is a kid that has a lot of self-doubt. And like I was
Don't
like,
cry.
yeah, I was like, and I looked at this kid and he struggles, and I said, I'm so sick and tired of people telling you you can't do something. I said, I don't ever want to hear that out of your mouth again. Like, I'm tired of it. You believe it. You accidentally just did 30 pounds more than you were supposed to. You got to 13. You thought you were going to die and you did it for 20. I
That's right.
said, you can't learn that anywhere else, Don. Where are you going to
That's
learn
right.
it?
Mhm.
Yeah, this is why Josh and I think, have been, kind of iron brothers, if you will, kindred brothers through this, is because the word that comes to my mind hearing those stories is initiation.
Yeah.
I was initiated in the weight room. These are stories of young people being initiated, finding out that they are so much more capable and resilient and tough than they thought they were, pushing their limits. And I think that's the point. The point is developing that resilience and that toughness, that I'm capable of so much more than I thought I was, and that the weakness is merely in my mind and not in my body. I can push my body to do so much more. And I think people get through that transformation in lots of ways. And some people are initiated through sport, and some are initiated through their parents, and maybe it's through academia.
Mhm.
But I think my first real initiation was the weight room, and it was proving myself to myself and proving myself to those that were around me that I could get stronger and I could get good at some of this stuff, and
Mhm.
that was a really important transformation for me. And I think that's what you're offering to your athletes, Josh. You're offering them an opportunity to improve themselves, to be a better version of who they are, and they're going to take that lesson and that habit throughout the rest of their life. And I think that that's the beauty of what the right person at the right time for the right person can be. It can be a truly transformative initiation that they carry with them, that memory for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. How many
And
times? Go ahead. Go ahead. Great. Go ahead.
I was just gonna add, I think a lot of guys find that, especially with sport. And I wish females would take the opportunity to find that same thing. And I can see this firsthand, like being a fitness instructor. I teach group fitness, right? And I do think there's a lot of change that happens inside of those four walls. But I wish a lot of females would find the heavier side of that and feel what it feels like to be under a barbell that's probably too heavy, or feel what it feels like. And that's probably why I love CrossFit is like there's a lot of female energy in there at the same time. Feel what it feels like to have somebody hazing you on the other side of the barbell. Like you're gonna do one more. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
I don't care if you don't think you
yeah.
can, you're gonna do it. Cause I feel the same way. It's like I love that feeling when I rack up a barbell and I'm like, I did way more than I thought I was ever gonna do.
Yeah.
There's no better teacher
Do you
than a
think this
barbell.
comes down to doing hard things? People need to do
Hell yeah.
hard things. Is that what I
Hmm.
mean? That I know that concept has been that's a little bit of a reductionist comment, right? When people say, "Oh, do more hard," I understand that. That fits a little bit of the the parents that tell you you can do anything if you put your mind to it, right?
Mm. To a point. That was a phrase that my wife and I used a lot early in our child rearing. We had 4 sons together in less than 6 years, which was a really, really
Do
arduous
hard
time.
things.
Right. And so my wife would say all the time, do hard things, do hard things. And it was really hard. And then we got to a place where we could, really no longer do that without familial support. And we had to move back towards family because we needed help. And, we were going on dates once a year and there was, it was tough. It was really hard. My wife was ill. We didn't have a diagnosis yet. And so, I think to a point, for me, and forgive me, I'm just coming back from a conference in Texas and I spent, probably 26 hours in a car with a theologian. But we were talking about these terms, and these probably will not be familiar with your audience, but orthodoxy, orthopraxy, and orthopathy. And we think a lot about maybe like right thinking leads to right doing, or
Mhm.
right thinking leads to right feeling. But what I was pushing back on my theologian friend was, or colleague, was that, and I think this is from the weight room, Josh, your point. I think that sometimes right doing leads to right thinking and right feeling, right? So thinking rightly, doing rightly, feeling rightly. The human being is a grouping of unlike things. Like if I was going to make my own species, I don't know that I would make us the way that we are. Like a rational being, an emotional being, and then some sort of conscience that we wrestle with, right? Guilt and shame. I don't know that I would put those 3 things together. But I think what I learned in the weight room is that uh, through the doing that I learned things. I was tougher than I thought I was. That through the doing, I learned how to work through, let's say, perfectionism or comparison, right? Which is the thief of true joy, right? Like if I'm gonna go in the weight room, even now, my athletic weight room here on campus, if I go in there and I lift with our powerlifting club or our football team, I have to go in there with a sense of self that says, I'm not the number on the bar, right? Like I'm not here to compete with these young fellas. I'm here to be the best version of me, as an almost 40-year-old. So like that's what I'm here for. And so I think that all of those things, thinking, doing, and feeling, they all mutually influence each other. And so when we say that we've been initiated or transformed by the doing in the weight room, I think what we are maybe trying to say in a bigger way is that it's also influenced how we think and it also influences how we feel. Take, for example, someone who's very fit or very advanced in CrossFit or any, physical discipline, and who are the kind of people that they pursue as life partners, right? Like people who are high achievers, they don't like low achievers. There's a Nick Saban quote in there somewhere about the mediocre and the high achiever. Like typically high achievers that if they're going to commit to a relationship, they're probably going to have to be another high achiever. It may not have to be the same. They don't maybe have to both be CrossFitters, but I'll tell you, they both have to be disciplined and working hard. So I think all 3 of these domains, they mutually influence one another. And that's why for me, again, I'm not genetically, physically impressive. I'm 5'8". I'm like 220 now. Like it's not lean weight, right? But I have allowed the weight room to shape me and my ethos and how I think and how I feel. And I think that that's what ultimately is why I am welcome at a Sorinex. Like, no, I'm not going to be the guy on the stage who's going to, even hit half of whatever the PR was that day. But I can appreciate what's going on because I was shaped by those types of environments, and I respect the work ethic. I love how those different domains influence one another.
That's like
One
you
of the other,
said, the number isn't the point, right? It's not the overall number. It's you fall in love with the exact mechanics of what's going on, you know?
yeah,
That's a huge difference.
yeah, I think that's probably why I love jujitsu so much. Is there is really no, I'm chasing this magic. This imaginary jujitsu man that doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
like
Yeah.
top skill, you know,
I
it's
think
top
I can get
skill.
him. If I can get him, I can reach the pinnacle of jujitsu mastery. But in actuality, he really doesn't even exist. But I'm still chasing him. I think at some point I will grab him and chase him, but it's not. I will realize I'm no good at this sport at all anyway, and I don't even
Yeah.
do it. I'm a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and my tagline on my social says "really bad at jiu-jitsu." And if I said that to some people, they'd probably be like, "You're an idiot for saying that." I was like, "No, it's my own self-deprecate, my own brain that I'm not good enough." But one of the things you said to me a long time ago, Don, I use this out of context, and I'm so glad that as we're talking, I'm bringing up things that I still use every day that come out in our conversations. Is there's a book about pain you told me to read a long time ago. It was right around the time I had a back injury. I read The Gift of Injury was a book that you told me to read. Phenomenal. I recommend it to. I wish I have a 16-year-old boy who just tore his ACL, and I want to so badly lay this book in his feet and say, "Please, dear son, I know you're invincible at 16, but this could be a gift for you, right? The gift of injury." And you had me read a book about pain that was way over my head, but I've said this to kids before. I've said it to me. I said, "Oh, it hurts." I said, "Well, that's just an impulse from your brain to your body. That really doesn't exist.
An output, right?
It's an output. Let's just not put."
Right.
And then you said that. You said that one time to me in a conversation, like, "Well, pain is just, there's input and the output is the pain." I said, it really doesn't honestly exist. It's all in your brain." And I've said that to people, and they're like, "Oh, I twist my ankle, my foot hurts. That's painful." I was like, "Oh, that doesn't really exist." Don
Sure.
Reagan,
So you're
Car-
just gaslighting them.
Don Reagan at Carson versus
Yeah.
he told me that it really doesn't exist. That it's just a thing because the whole concept of pain uh,
Yeah.
was something that I kind of
Sure.
into after our conversations of like, well, why does it hurt? What is it hurting? What is it either like?
Yeah.
So that I know that's a big conversation later on,
Yeah,
but
pain is a really complex topic, and it's hard to study, and it's hard to really wrap our minds around. And I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier about anthropology of like who we are as people, as human beings. We're a grouping of unlike things. So I think there's two layers really to that answer of like what is pain. It's kind of like talking about suffering. Like needless suffering is a really difficult thing to wrap our heads around, and there's two real responses. There's the response when you are experiencing pain or experiencing suffering, which is, knowledge is power. Why am I hurting? What caused this? What's the diagnosis? What's the prognosis? What's my plan of care? There's also kind of I think, a separate, distant response to suffering or pain, which is what that conversation was, Josh, about kind of the more you understand physiology and you understand kind of like phantom limb pain is a good example of people who have pain, chronic pain experiences in tissue that they don't even actually have associated with their body anymore. So I think there's two layers to this conversation. There's, kind of the grief observed of like, I am in the midst of suffering or pain. And that needs to be empathetic. It needs to not be a gaslight, Gray, as you said, like, we're not going to dismiss that. All pain is real pain. And everyone who's experiencing pain, no matter what I think about it or not, if they say they're experiencing pain and it's 9 out of 10, it's 9 out of 10.
yeah,
But there is another level to this that is a bit maybe disassociated, which is more of like, okay, well, how do we think about this kind of objectively and maybe scientifically? And it's no different than suffering. Of like, okay, can you reframe suffering as some sort of maybe ultimate good or some kind of gift? And ultimately, like an ACL that Josh and I have rehabbed lots of ACLs, and you know the initial ACL tear before surgery, right? This kid's a mess. It's the worst thing that's ever happened to them. Their season's over. Their identity's in jeopardy. They don't know if they're ever going to play that sport again the way that they were playing it, right? That conversation is so different, right? It's about being in the room, being present, listening to them, empathizing with them, telling them this is not the only person this has ever happened to. A year later, after that surgery, right? And hopefully, right, they have good limb symmetry index. They've done some hopping and a Y balance and, some isokinetic testing, and they're back on the field or court or doing the thing that they love. That conversation is so different, right? It's
yeah,
what did you learn from this process, this journey, right? What happened from the identity threat of I may not be a basketball player ever again, right? What most of my people learn is that they're way tougher, right? Back to like what we learned in the weight room. I'm way more resilient. My body is amazing. I had all this time to read a book, to binge a show, to work on my relationships. There's all these other pieces in those first 4 months, after surgery that our people can still learn and grow, right? Even though they can't, jump and run with that new ACL. So I just think there's layers to that conversation, and we do get in trouble, myself included, when we use the wrong tier at the wrong time, right? So when I've been in the middle of patient care and I've come across as well, pain is just an output and no empathy. Gray's absolutely right, right? Those folks dropped me. They went around town and they found somebody else who listened to them, and was present with them. And I've had to mature because I am an analytical person that a big part of my job as a physical therapist is to be in the room, is to hold on to that emotional weight with them, to help them carry that, to let them get it out, and then to explain to them what the process or the journey is from this day, to recognize, okay, here's how this goes. Here's the first few weeks. Here's the first few months. Here's kind of give them that game plan. And once you kind of develop a plan, you give clarity on kind of the explanation of what's happened. The two words that come to mind the most with fear and pain and injury is these two terms of kinesiophobia and catastrophization. That's what we do as humans. When we are injured and we're in pain, we are afraid to move, kinesiophobia. Can I straighten my knee? Can I bend my knee? Can I walk? And then it's, well, how bad is it? Like, the catastrophization. And I got a great example of this. About a year ago, I had a baseball player who's a catcher. I love this lad. He was wrestling in the locker room with one of his teammates, and they're goofing off or whatever. And his teammate jujitsu'd him down. I don't know anything about martial arts, but kind of threw him down, landed on his knee, whatever, pop. Right? Not in the heat of battle, not even on the field, literally just goofing around. Knee swole up. It was bad. He was embarrassed. The whole team is giving him a hard time. Goes to the athletic trainer, goes to the ortho, gets a brace, gets some crutches. Ortho's like, yeah, I need an MRI. It's probably torn. Don't know how bad it is. And this is where the uncertainty comes in of, is it just an ACL or is it an ACL and a medial meniscus and an MCL? Like, how bad is it? So somehow in this journey between initial injury and seeing me, he's on bilateral axillary crutches and he's completely non-weight bearing.
Oh.
He's hopping around campus, right? Because he's not sure if I weight bear on it, is it going to make it worse? So I see him maybe 5 days after the initial injury. He had an MRI, hasn't had a kind of his findings yet. And basically in the first session, right, within 60 minutes, we had this conversation about, what do you need in order to have this surgery? Well, I can tell you one thing you need is for your knee to be straight. And how do you get your knee straight? It's not by hopping around all day with it bent to 90. It's not by sitting around with your knee bent. And so in one session, he went from bilateral axillary crutches on with a knee brace to walking out on our football field dragging a 45-pound sled. Why? Because I explained what happened. I explained that no matter what tissue damage is in there, it's damaged. And the surgeon's going to open you up on surgery day, and they're going to do what they need to do. If it's an ACL and a medial meniscus, then they're going to do all of that. But are you going to make it worse by walking on it, by weight bearing and dragging a sled? Absolutely not. It was the biggest just a great clinical experience for me to recognize, wow, like the power of our words, how we emphasize, how we explain things. And I've written about this in the PT world. I think that the therapeutic alliance that we build, that's really the secret sauce of what we do. The science and sports science and force plates and all that stuff, is all that important? Absolutely. But it's the trust that's the prerequisite to any of those behavior changes or any of those lifestyle changes. I will never forget that young lad. I'll never forget that 60 minutes where he came in on crutches, non-weight bearing, walked out. He handed me the crutches in the knee brace and was like, I guess I don't need this anymore. And I'm like, no, you don't. You don't need it anymore.
That is treating the human, the person
holistically. Sure.
I had a kid that had a series of about 18 months of some injury to injury to injury, came back too early, re-injured. You know what we've always heard, like the ankle gets bad, then the knee hurts, then the hamstring. Like, you know, we've chased injury, and he was coming back from his final one. This kid's going to go play college football in Ivy League school now. And I looked at him. I said, "Hey, man, I mean, you're ready to get back on the field. You cleared. Does it hurt?" He goes, "Yeah, it hurts. Coach, I don't even know anymore if it hurts."
Mhm.
And at that moment, I went, like, he dropped his head and he goes, "Coach,
Yeah.
I don't even know if it hurts or not anymore.
Sure.
Everything I
Sure.
feel registers as pain."
Yeah. And that's the difference between acute and chronic pain. And that's a dangerous place
It is,
because
man.
when
I
people
was
start
hard.
disassociating,
I wanted to hug the
Mhm.
kid. I wanted to hug the kid, but
sure,
I just wanted to give him a hug because I'm like, man, he wants to play.
sure,
He's afraid to go out there because every time he went out there, something else got hurt.
sure.
He'll be who he wants to be. And he had this defeatedness of,
Yeah.
I don't even know if it what the pain
Yeah.
is.
Unfortunately, in our athletics department, I think I have by proxy become a bit of that person for our athletes. Like
Go talk to Don.
typically
He'll make you feel better.
they say that, right? But then it's like, okay, they had 7 concussions, right? And like they're in my room and they're like, but I want to play one more year. And I'm like, okay, but do you also want to be a father and a grandfather? And what's life like after football? Well, I'm going to play at the next level. And I'm like, are you going to play at the next level? And so yeah, I have a tendency to kind of be that person and that sounding board. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I try to be there for our people, and I try to be honest with them and authentic and go, okay, like, are we really thinking clearly? We've had 3 ACLs. Like really tell me what you're thinking. What does coach think? What do you think? What do your parents want? There's all these constituents that are involved in this decision, and it's tough and it's a big decision. Young athletes, right? This is all they've known. They have spent their whole life and a lot of investment from their parents, a lot of times, in this sport. And it's really scary to let go of that identity. But the truth is that that's not all they are.
Yeah.
There's so much more to these young people, and they just need to be, I think, encouraged that, hey, man, there's so much more to who you are as a young person. And that's why, ultimately I'm in academia is I love the young adult. I love, their optimism and their hope that they are still trying to figure themselves out and trying to figure out how they fit in this world. And I love those conversations and being part of that for, the young folks on my campus.
Don, I really appreciate you coming on. I would like to do a part two. I feel like there's so much we have
Definitely.
out. There's so much we haven't talked about, from the knowledge you have to the holistic, to the human side of it, to the technical side of it, to the concept of expertise, um, finding your purpose of what you're supposed to do. Um, I appreciate you coming on, Don. It's been a real pleasure, and hopefully we can meet one more time in the next 12 years.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, Don, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much.
With all due respect.
Hey, we're Josh Ortegan and Gray Gaines, and this is With All Due Respect, the show where we keep it real about health, fitness, and performance. From weight loss to sports development, we're covering the conversations that matter.
Follow us on Instagram at Phenom Fitness, PHNM Fitness, and visit www.phenomfit.com to check out our training programs, coaching, and gear built for real results. Let's get into it.